it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics with a really fun block we'll be focusing on today. Is it the table runner you love? Maybe a special dining event, a luncheon, something where you want to dress up that table, and maybe one of these two colorways is just the perfect one. Or maybe you have a special reading spot, a sunroom, or just some place you want to add beauty to. We have quilts available where, again, the two blocks are either the patchwork block or a fussy cut vignette of a beautiful floral, whether it's the pink or the periwinkle colorway. These fabrics are our very first collection that I ever did with Riley Blake called Hydrangeas in the Garden. It took 4 rounds of something called strike off to hit those colors of hydrangeas we see in gardens really all across the United States. And didn't they do an incredible job? Riley Blake's team is just as relentless as I am about getting the perfect color, and I think it was a marriage made in heaven because they did it. And so many of these fabrics have a pearlescence in the background. Our white that is featured here, and it may be difficult to see, is a white on white with a pearlescence. It's just beautiful. So today's video will be about how do we make, this is a half square triangle, to bring them all together into a beautiful pinwheel block. How do we get these Flying Geese units so precise that this block comes together? This is what today is going to be all about. Kits are available for a limited time. We never know if they're going to be reprinting this fabric as well as any collection. So if these projects speak to you, without delay, be sure to pick up the table runner kit in either the pink or the periwinkle or the lap quilts, again, in both of those colorways with full color patterns to support. And the video today will work for both the table runner and the quilt because it's the same 2 blocks. All right, we're going to be focusing on some techniques, some things that have now been added to the marketplace, and why we're choosing them to help us bring that block into precision absolutely every single time. So inside of our pattern, it of course is always going to begin with having some precise cuts. So as you'd expect with any precise patchwork, here's the drill. You have that iron heating up to full hot. I'm going to do that right now. I grab for best press or whatever brand of sizing you like to use. Open up that kit. Get that fabric nice and misted and iron everything flat. I learned a little bit later in my early days of quilting just how important a fresh, clean, sharp blade was. My cuts were not always as precise or as accurate as they should have been. I don't know why I thought I was going to get perfect blocks with subpar cuts. It doesn't make sense, right? We need to have a fresh blade in that rotary cutter and, of course, some good tools to make accurate cuts. That is step number 1. Once everything has been cut out, now we're going to move into how do we break this block down. And I'm going to show you what we're going for and what tools we're going to be using to achieve this result every single time. You do not need to be having quilted for decades to be able to achieve this. And that's why I love teaching you, that you don't have to be intimidated or think that is past you. Not at all, and we're going to be stepping through that each little piece at a time until you have a block that looks just like mine. This block actually starts here. Our instructions inside our pattern start talking about something called HST Perfect. What is that? It's actually a brand new product from Shabby Fabrics, and that HST means half square triangles. This is a half square triangle, and so is this and this and this. And so are these. This is a very common block that you see as usually part of a larger block in quilts. And you'll see them as you start to examine quilts. You're going to be like, there's one, there's one. Yes, you're going to see a lot of those. And we also see a lot of flying geese and blocks, right? Usually incorporated, again, inside a larger block. But focusing on the HST Perfect Papers and why we created those at Shabby Fabrics is we've just seen inconsistency in our own making and certainly in other people's making as well. The traditional way to make half square triangles, let's say that you wanted to have 2-inch finished half square triangles. Here's what the rule of thumb of 7/8 is. Here's how it used to work and how I learned, maybe you learned. First off, we would have to cut both of our fabrics to 7/8 of an inch larger. First off, finding 7/8 of an inch is uncomfortable. We can find it, but it's not our normal. I'd have to cut each of those fabrics to 2 7/8, draw a diagonal line on the back side of one of those, place them right side together, pin them, and sew 1/4 of an inch left and 1/4 inch right of that line, cut on the diagonal, press, and hope and pray that now mat is exactly 2.5 inches. Many times it wasn't. That's what led to the inconsistency, and you can see the very center of that block is dependent on that being accurate. So what if you're off? Well, the whole block will be off. This is why we took the time to engineer the HST Perfect Papers, and this is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. You can make these, and our instructions guide you into the ability to use the papers by having you pre-cut 2 of your fabrics here. My beautiful white shimmer, my white on white polka dot, and my pearlescent light purple. This step here of these 2 fabrics being cut in our instructions to 6.5 inches sets us up for the ability to use our HST Perfect Papers, which I'm going to talk to you about and demonstrate so you can see, wow, yes, that's a way to do that. You're also making 8 half square triangles every single time without trimming up, and we're going to go through that step. But if you're like, nope, don't talk to me about any newfangled products, we have an instruction inside our pattern for you after you've cut your 6.5 inches square that you would then go on and cut these in half and in half to 3 1/4, and you would go into a traditional way of making the half square triangles 2 at a time, and you need to square those up with a 2.5 inch. But let's focus on how do we use this new product, because I'm going to tell you, I see a lot of notions and I only bring you things that I use that I know will bring you value. I'm not here to just sell you notions that I don't believe in. We have brought notions in, by the way, thinking this was something that we were all going to be like excited about, and after using it we say no, and you never see those products. We actually send them back. So it has to be good enough to be something we use that we now bring forward to you. So here's how this works. We have our 2 fabrics, and I just like to have my lighter fabric up top for whatever reason. We're going to place those 2 fabrics right side together, and with our HST Perfect Papers, this is inside a pad here, you have 50 sheets. You're simply going to remove one of those sheets. I like that that is now stored for safekeeping. By the way, notice the other sizes here. 2 inches, very common, very, very common. But hey, I want assistance with other size half square triangles too. Maybe you're working on some miniature quilts. Look at this. 1 inch, 1.5, our 2, our 2.5, 3, 3.5, and even 4. We support you through all of those sizes, and that's lovely, right? Because once you see the convenience, the precision, and making 8 at a time, if you're like me, you're not going to want to make them any other way than using the HST Perfect Papers. So we go ahead, place them right side together, and I place my paper on top. And notice my instructions are exactly on my paper. Shorten stitch length to 1.5 millimeters. So I'm going to do that actually right now. The default on a Bernina is a 2.5, so I'm bringing that way back. That makes sense to me. I want more thread in a given distance, and it's going to help perforate the papers. Layer 2, 6.5 by 6.5 inch squares, right side together. We've done that. Pin paper on top, and I think we better pin where we know we won't be sewing. We're going to be sewing on the dashed lines, and we're going to be cutting on the solid lines, and it says that, sew on dashed lines, cut on solid lines, remove paper and press seams as desired. And we'll talk about the pressing. So here's what we'll be doing. We're going to be pinning in all of these areas right here. And it's simple, right? We just head to that machine and we're sewing on those dashed lines. It doesn't get easier. I have a feeling we already did one of those in advance just to save us time. But notice how I pin everything well. I don't want anything shifting. And again, I'm just coming on, rotating and coming back down. So easy. In fact, we did, oh, she pinned a lot less than me, and that works too. Maybe I probably overpinned. And we've sewn directly on those lines. Now, remember what I said, and the paper is guiding us into that. Everywhere you see a solid line, you cut. And make sure you're very precise, because that is what your half square triangle is going to be. There's no squaring up, remember that. It's already done for you. So let me just cut some of these apart, and you can see how accurate these are. They are absolutely on the mark. And 8 at a time. Let me just get one out of here so you can see it, and we'll measure that. All right, and I would just keep cutting, right? So we have 8. Put that aside. To remove this paper, because you sewed on a shortened stitch length, that helps perforate the paper. We simply remove our paper, and our pattern is going to guide us into, let's look at our pattern, remembering that the arrows that you're seeing, these arrows here, are a pressing instruction. They're letting us know for both this beautiful kind of pinkish purple as well as the light purple. Those are going to be pressing toward the purple. Look at that. Love it. Now I happen to have a 2.5 inch ruler on set with me. I'm just going to trim off these little dog ears, but let's do a measurement check. Let's check this out. Look at this. It's perfect. Ready to go. You're going to just cut all of those, and you have 8 half square triangles, enough to do 2 blocks, 2 of the pinwheel blocks here. Same with the outer ones when you marry up that light purple and that white, and you repeat that process. So once you have, let me clean up just a touch. Once you have all of your half square triangles in our light purple, let's see what we have here. The first thing I do is I make sure that I lay out my block. In fact, let me cut one more of those, because I want to show you, I want to lay this out so you see what this will look like and give you some tips and techniques on construction. All right, trim off those little dog ears, lay that block out. Make sure everything is looking correct. And now let's just move into our pattern so you can follow along with me. Now you can see that we're going to be right side together, and notice how, with right side together, notice how these seams nest because we consistently press toward the purple. Now I'm going to sew this. I want to pin right along that diagonal because I don't want anything moving. Remember that this is the center of the pinwheel. It's going to be in here. Now, something I want to point out too, this is no one taught me this. I had to kind of discover this on my own. This one, the fact that this is going to be the center of my pinwheel, I very much care about that coming together. While I could sew from here to here, I'm going to flip this over because I want that center of that pinwheel to be right on the mark. Let's go sew these two together. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. I should have put my seam guide down, but I'll see if I can do it without it today. Might be a good day. And what I mean about my seam guide is this is the guide that I like to use. Notice I have my little runway here. I've set this up so if I put my seam guide just for me, the way I've set it up, just like that, where I just barely see that block line, this helps my block not go chunky, which is my miss. Okay. And our instruction is guiding us to press those open. That makes sense to me, to distribute the bulk. Let's see how we did here. I'm going to let my iron sit there. I really want to press this open. This is a great time to use a clapper. Anytime a seam resists opening, a wooden clapper is a great option. I might grab one of those before I head over to the sewing machine, especially when I sew these two halves together and press open again. That really doesn't want to be pressed open, and that's where using a clapper can help assure that that actually happens. All right, I'll grab a clapper. First thing I'll do though, however, before I even grab that clapper and head over to the sewing machine, put that block back on the table. Do you realize you could sew it like this and you would have a different block, but that's not what we're going for, right? Make sure you put that back on the table. Now, I'm trying to stack those. I don't have interlocking seams. Sometimes with open seams, they want to roll off of each other. I'm stacking that looking straight from the top. I'm going to pin right up this middle. That's what I care about most. That's what's most important to me. Then I'll come into the corners and pin. Now, let's look at something else that happens when we press a seam open like this. Do you see this right there, that V, right? Right there. When I come with my 1/4 inch seam allowance, that needle needs to pass at that place. That place, not to the right, not to the left as I continue. That's going to help guide me into the perfect spot where that confluence of all those seams coming together is exactly at the right place. I'm going to grab a clapper and then I'll see you at the sewing machine. All right, let's take a peek if we got our pinwheel right. If that shifted, that's the next thing you're doing is grabbing a seam ripper because it's going to drive you crazy. Ask me how I know that. I look back at some of my first quilts and I thought, did I just not see it? And no, I should have seam ripped? I don't know. It's a thing. But now that I have this is from the Gypsy Quilter. It's a presser bar and clapper combination. As you'll see, this seam is not going to want to open up. See how it just wants to stay closed? But when I wrap it over top, of the presser bar. It's a way for me to get that iron in there, the tip of that iron, and basically say you will open up. You are going to open up good and flat. Put that on there one more time once that seam is open. Again, a good 5, 6, 7 seconds. Then this clapper is going to be going right on top of that. Right after I take this away. Okay, so the clapper's job is to now accept the heat from the block. As it cools down, it's pressing on the block and going to keep that seam allowance good and flat. That's how we make our center of our block. And now we'll go ahead and we're going to move on to our Flying Geese unit. Okay, while that's cooling down here, this fast Flying Geese technique is so cool. I love how quilting has evolved. Back in the day when I learned, there was the rectangle, then I had some smaller squares. I drew the line, put them in the corner, sewed on the line, and I trimmed and threw away a lot of fabric. And they were not oversized. They had to just be perfect, and they sometimes were and often weren't. And it was just, again, hit and miss. There's such a better technique now. Here's how we do this. With the fast Flying Geese technique, and we're going to be using the assistance of the Ultimate Flying Geese Tool. This is by Deb Heatherly. She also has one that was recently released. This is the original. The one that was recently released, I think they're calling it 2. This is the Ultimate Flying Geese Tool. The number on this is CGR for Crib Grid Ruler. DH is for Deb Heatherly 4. So it's CGRDH4. That's the one. All right. You'll see the magic here shortly. Our instructions are guiding us into cutting our white fabric here with 1 white fabric in 4 of this beautiful shimmer dot periwinkle. You will have 4 incredible Flying Geese units, and you're not going to want to make this any other way. By the way, look what this block looks like now that it's cooled down. That seam isn't closing back up, so let's put that aside for now. Good job on the presser bar. Thank you, presser bar and clapper. All right, how does this work? Well, the first thing that you can do, I'm going to give you an option here, is you can either draw the line diagonal to diagonal, and that's what's shown in the pattern. And you would do that twice. You'd actually do this on the back of all 4 of these. I'm just going to show you 2 of them. This is if you don't use another tool that I love to use, which is the Creative Grid Seam Guide. How we show you how to do this in the pattern: place one in opposite corners from each other, pin, trim the excess fabric, cutting underneath there. But if you do that, notice how you have to now go on your own and track a 1/4 inch away from that line and a 1/4 inch away from that same line on the opposite side. You can do that. That's how we all did that. No, there's nothing wrong with doing that. My preferred technique, that's why you watch these videos, is how does Shabby actually do this? Here's how we actually do this. Ultimate Flying Geese, Seam Guide. That's the Ultimate Flying Geese, but I use this in conjunction with the Ultimate Flying Geese to get me all set up. So I'm gonna let that, notice I just ironed my friction pen away. Here's what we do. Place the seam guide. This comes at a 9-inch and a 15-inch. If you have a really long block, grab the 15-inch. For what we're doing, the 9-inch is sufficient. Okay? I place this in opposite corners. Draw on those lines. Guess what? I don't have to track a 1/4 of an inch away. I'm sewing on the line. And for me, that is always going to be my most accurate approach every single time. I actually like to put this one down here first. I don't know why I like to put that one in there. Place this on top. Notice there's a line that's continuous. We pin and we pin. We pin it first and then we cut the fabric that overlaps. That's kind of a bonus. I have made plenty of flying geese where I forgot to cut the fabric that overlaps here. It came out okay. But if you think about it, go ahead, underneath, I'm making sure I'm not cutting my background. I'm just going straight across. I cut the excess, now they meet. I sew directly on those lines. And I think I've done that. No, let's go do that together actually. I thought I did that. We're gonna sew directly on our drawn lines. I can relax, right? I'm not trying to track 1/4 of an inch away from the line. Okay, and now on the other side. All right, once we've done that, we simply cut diagonal to diagonal. So far, we've used our white background in 2 of our squares. Notice we have 2 more remaining. With both of these, we're going to be pressing away. It's kind of funny at first. Now, we sit this right into this corner, just like that. Pin, pin. We're going to sew on the lines. Same. Now I know that I'm just going to sit here. You understand that you could do this diagonal, not using the seam guide. This one was just drawn that way. And you would need to track 1/4 of an inch away. If you're like, oh no, I like this. You simply iron that away. You'd never draw that line. Instead, you'd be using your seam guide, right? You'd be marking on either side. You understand. That would be sitting right in that corner, pinned. All right, let me go sew that together. Actually, you know what? We did that ahead of time. Hot dog. Saving us a little bit of time. All right, let's once again cut corner to corner. Now here's one of my coolest things I love about this technique. This is an oversized technique. What's that mean? Grace. It means you have grace. It means you don't have to sew perfectly. You just have to trim up perfectly now, and the tool does the work for you. So that's what's coming up next, is we're going to press to the outside. There's 2. And of course, we already know with this unit here, once we sew, we get our other 2. That's how we're getting 4 Flying Geese units out of so little fabric. Now, here's the magic. The Ultimate Flying Geese tool is incredible. We happen to be making this size block, but the sizes it can produce are as small as a Flying Geese unit that's only a 1/2 an inch tall by 1 inch. These are the people that love miniature quilts. I am not in that community, but I have some makers at Shabby that just love that. It's so cute. That's for you, okay? That's size A, all the way up to 4x8 and so many sizes in between. And the new Ultimate Flying Geese tool, the second version, has even more sizes. But in addition to all of these amazing sizes where it's letting you know what size you would cut that one fabric to, which in our case is a white on white with the polka dot, it's letting you know what size to cut that fabric to. And notice the 4 of those. That's because we had 4 squares, right? That's letting you know what size. One of those big ones, 4 of those squares together makes 4 of those. But there's more. In this instance, the block that we're working on happens to be letter D. That's just a nomenclature that's on this tool. Why I bring that up now is notice there's a trim 1 function and a trim 2 function. There's 2 trim jobs that we're going to do that's going to take this oversized block that's not the right size into the perfect size. So trim 1 with our letter D, notice I'm sitting that right inside that saddle until those lines are lining right up inside that. Notice how 2 sides of my block are covered up by the acrylic template. 2 sides are open. Maybe that's why there's 2 trim functions, and of course that's why. For trim 1, which you need to start with trim 1, it exposes the right side and it exposes the top. This works incredibly well with a spinning mat. Notice I won't lift up that spinning mat at all. I keep doing these rotations, 90 degrees to the right, 90 degrees to the right. I'm going to drop this down, and the only reason I'm going to move this block is so that you can see it from my vantage point. I will still be A, B, C, D. We're still D. Get that little piece of fabric out of there so you're not looking at that. The D line is here. I'm lined up on the left side of my block. I'm lined up along the bottom of my block. So I have this V, this line, and this line. We are absolutely in the perfect spot to make the second trim. Trim, turn your mat, trim. This block is absolutely perfectly cut to now be finishing, as we are seeing in our letter D, to 2 by 4. So think about that. These measurements are always based on finished measurements. So what that tells me now is this unit is going to be 2.5 by 4.5. And I'm going to take this longer ruler and do a measurement check with you in real time. This ruler is 2.5 and right there's 4.5. Perfect every single time. So after you've done your cutting and you've got precise cutting done, it's in these tools. It's in the HST Perfect Papers. It's in the Ultimate Flying Geese Tool. And as you can see, I love my seam guide. That's up to you whether you want to draw the diagonal and track left or right or the seam guide. But there's no question that the precision of these tools takes what was an uncertain block into near certainty, and I love that. Okay, so now we're going to assume that we magically, with our HST papers, not only did our center pinwheel, which you saw, we did that together, but you made another set to have your half square triangles in the corners, and that we went ahead and used our trim 1 and our trim 2 function so that now we have our pinwheel, we have our Flying Geese units ready to go, and we have those beautiful half square triangles and that pretty color in the corners. Always lay out your block before you start sewing things together. Make sure you have all of the orientation correct. And as you would expect, you're going to be starting to sew things into rows. Let's talk about the center row because we have, in this instance, I want to very much talk about that alignment because you want that corner and that place to line up. And I want to give you some pointers of how to do that. Okay, I'm just going to turn it this way here. Move this to the side. Here, I want to make sure, notice how I'm kind of lining this up, looking from above. Scooting it over ever so slightly and pinning right there, right there. Then trim off that little bit in that corner. Then I'm pinning over here. Pin where it matters first. Pin that. Because if you're off here, there's no hiding that. There's no hiding that. We want all of those points to hit. That's why I'm pinning there first. And I'm definitely sewing. And right there, again, X marks the spot. So my 1/4 inch, come back, do the same. I think I might have sewn that one ahead of time. Let's see if I did that. Nope, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, let's see, our instruction is telling us they want us to press that one open. Okay, we'll do it. Let's warm that up and see how we did. Look how it just lines up. It's so much about the precision where to pin first. It all adds up. Okay. I'm going to put a clapper on that one here. Okay. While that is cooling down, of course, we would just pin the other side till it also presses open here. Because of the way we pressed, look how we have interlocking seams, right? This seam's going this way, this thing's going this way. We're going to be pinning right up here, there, and in that corner. That's the pinning. Use my seam guide, 1/4 inch. I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. Again, pressed open. Same thing with the bottom row. You'll absolutely have interlocking seams. We put a lot of thought, by the way, into pressing because we know how important interlocking seams are. We don't always get that. As you can see, sometimes we have seams pressed open just to distribute bulk, but we have techniques to help things stack top to bottom so they come out beautifully. And look at that. Isn't that lovely, right? And again, you get the idea. This is all about precise cutting, specific tools. Where are you pinning first? Pressing, obviously very important. And then we're going to be sewing our top row, our middle row, and all this together. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's just kind of take the block that we've already done. Let's pretend that we've already done our top row, our middle row, and our bottom row. When I attach that top row to that middle section, because everything was pressed open, I'm not just stacking and pinning left to right. You know that by now. You know that we're stacking these up to make sure they're top to bottom, pinning, pinning, pinning. 1/4 inch seam allowance, press everything open. All right, we know that for our table runner, we need to be making 3 of those blocks and obviously many, many more for our quilts. For the fussy cut block here, I'll just kind of zip through that one. It's very quick. The only thing I want to say about the fussy cut block is having a mission-specific ruler that helps you place it right on top of that sweet spot of your fabric where you can say, yes, that's where I want my fabric, is such a lovely option. And I'm never going to be sorry that I have a tool like this that's going to be getting me in that sweet spot. I'm always going to use something like this again. And of course, I would be using that kind of roughly cutting around that and then coming back, roughly cutting around to just extract it, the larger piece of fabric, and then coming back and really dialing that in. Now, one thing that we did when we came to adding our 4 squares in the corner, white on white dot, drew the line diagonally, placed them in all 4 corners, sewing directly on that line, okay? So let's just pretend we've already done that. We come in here with our 1/4 inch, trim that away, and I'm doing that on all 4 corners until it looks like this, okay? Normally you would expect, as I would if I wasn't reading an instruction, I would always be pressing away. That's just what I want to do. But because we love interlocking seams, what we discovered, if you just press this block away like this, and this one like this, I'm just going to show you what we discovered and why the pressing instruction is not what we thought it would be. Is look what happens when we go to sew these blocks together. There's a lot of bulk. Notice this seam's going this way and so is this one. For that reason, totally not intuitive, instead of pressing away, that seam is now going to be pressed toward the middle of the block, like this, just like that. So let me press one with you. How I do this is I start off pressing to the outside, as you saw, but then I quickly flip it over and get that seam moving toward the middle of the block. That's how I manage pressing back toward itself. Once we do that step, now when we go to sew these blocks together, now look how they will nest. Here, look how they're moving in opposite directions. Oh, yes, please, right? Yes, please. That is absolutely going to be in that exact spot, right there. Right there. Pinning, pinning, pinning. We have them in opposite directions, of course, for 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then following our guidance, I imagine that's going to have us pressing seams open too, yes. As we sew our 3 blocks together that are patchwork and our 2 blocks of our fussy cut. And that's how this constructs. But I knew, I heard a lot of people talk about, they fell in love with this collection, and I knew it was going to have some easier projects like table runners and simple blocks like this. But I knew there were some tips and techniques that I wanted to share with you today. So I know it's been a longer video, but I never want to leave beginners out. You know, we're not all have been sewing for decades. This next generation is coming, and we're so glad you are. Even if you're maybe not maybe a young woman, but you've just been focused on other hobbies, welcome to the world of quilting. Be sure to subscribe to the Shabby Fabrics channel. Here we love to teach you. Our videos are free for you to watch 24/7, 365. Please sign up for the newsletter as well on the website at the very top. When you go to the Shabby Fabrics website, there you can subscribe not only to email but also texting. That is the quickest way to know about things that are happening here, new Block of the Month clubs, sales, and so much more. Thank you for giving me a part of your day, and I look forward to seeing you on a future Shabby video.